welcome to the finale of the Schlafly Show, the show that watches Hulu's Mrs. America and then drags Phyllis Schlafly for filth and talks about other stuff we like. I can't believe it is the final episode, and as always, I am joined by my incredible co-host, Moji Alawode-El, who you know from the Feminist Sleep Yourself podcast and who works at Abortion Access Front, and Molly Gaebe, a writer on Abortion Access Front and an incredible comedian and improviser. And our special guest tonight is very, very special because Joe Miller, who has been working with us behind the scenes, helping produce the Schlafly Show, helping us working at AAF, doing our amazing TikToks and doing just incredible comedy stuff. You also know her because she was one of the creators of the Sam B Show, writer on The Daily Show, old friend of mine, Joe Miller! Yay!
Hey!
What a Joe, you turned it out today in full Gloria, full 70s, the whole thing.
It's amazing.
The wooden ring that is obligatory on all 70s attire and accessories. I'm very ashamed of that.
Well, I think I'm glad that you're here to bring your shame. We're so happy that you're here. You know, this has been a super fun series to do. And I feel like we got a little bit hosed on people watching the show versus us talking about the show, because so much stuff started happening that this super important show got kind of like, I think, lost in the shuffle. And so, but for those who watched it, they really like our recap. So I feel good about that. So let's talk about this final episode, because final episodes are always the thing that ties everything together, makes you excited, brings all this stuff. And there's always like disappointments, and then there's always like super high points. So let's hit the high points of this final episode first, how it related to the episode and maybe how it related to the entire series. Let's start with our guest, Joe Miller. Joe.
Hi. So high point of this episode for me was that fantastic line of solidarity for Bella after she was fired by twerpy little rat-faced Ham Jordan. I remember him, I'm from Georgia, but I didn't remember that he was such a nasty little sexist pipsqueak. And it just expected the women to fall in line when the, loud Jewish lady from New York was gone, and they just slapped their resignations down on his desk and walked out and had a press conference. And I was like, mwah! God, I love solidarity. That was my favorite.
I love that too. And I love that too, because that scene in particular, and the whole setup of it, when we watched them being really, Bella was resigned in that whole situation, right? When it was like Jimmy Carter gave us 15 minutes and she was like, well, what am I supposed to do? And then to watch that gang of women say, 10 women in a room being like, you call him and you tell him that we want a proper meeting.
15 minutes isn't a meeting. It's a photo op.
Well, what am I supposed to do?
Cancel it. Ask for a proper meeting.
This is how the boys do it.
And the fact that it didn't occur to Bella that she could ask for a proper meeting, and she's Bella friggin' Abzug, that was amazing.
But Bella was kind of right, because the Gloria and Carmen are like, that's how the men do it. Kissinger did it, and Jimmy Carter, danced to his tune. And so Bella tries to do what Henry Kissinger did, and no, you're a woman. Don't do that.
Yeah. She also didn't.
My penis.
She didn't use attrition as a policy either, which I feel Henry Kissinger was very good at.
She could have secretly bombed Cambodia, and that was her mistake.
Yes, exactly. Moji, favorite moment. Mwah.
This was not my favorite episode, but it was a good episode. And I feel like I love that we got to see all of our characters, right? Like we spent a little time with just about everyone, and really got a sense of the stories wrapping up. I think highlight favorite may have been just the evolution of our fictional character, Alice, sort of starting at this, like, we got to stop this ERA, to like, I'm now working for pin money, right? Like,
And I like not having to ask him for pin money. It's empowering.
You used to feel empowered by me.
I used to feel scared.
I think that, that's our fictional character. Of all of the arcs we've seen, that is the one that is most made up, but I also think is the one that may be a little more universal.
I think that's true too. And they used her so often, I feel, throughout the series, and especially in this episode, to sort of be the voice for all of us. And I think, this episode focused a lot on this celebration of the death of the ERA and their big party scene, which I'm sort of curious as to what you all think about why they spent so much time on this party scene. I know I have my thoughts, but like, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think it was sort of necessary to wrap up the whole thing. Love the drama of it. It mirrors the pilot episode where she's coming out. They're shooting her from the back. Yeah, in the pilot episode, she's coming out in a bikini for Phil Crane to raise money for him. And here we see she's reached her pinnacle. This is a gala about her. The ERA has, morally died in their eyes. And she is coming into her own, whatever that means for her. So to me, this was also a setup of her fall from grace personally, internally. We know that she goes on to be in the family values movement until the day that she freaking dies. But, we need to see her at this pinnacle here, at this gorgeous gala with the souffle shoulder dress, to see her fall in that last scene that I want to talk about later.
I also feel like it was echoing when we see the feminists early on, like going to party at the Guggenheim, and there's photographers and there's press, and like Gloria has some handsome young thing on her arm, if I remember correctly. And like they were, and I feel like early then the juxtaposition was like, wow, the feminists are like in New York having fun.
Yeah.
And we're winning. We're winning.
Yeah, they were winning. And Phyllis and her ladies were in the hair salon, because that's where you go when you're a loser. And then by the end, there's Gloria and Betty in the hair salon because they're losers.
It's true. And
writers.
I like the juxtaposition of their terrible chicken dinner party too. That gala that they threw was this quintessential hotel, terrible lighting, terrible food, seating arrangements. The whole thing was really, it was a good way also, I think, to set up the planning of that party and to show where alliances were made, right? That Phyllis Schlafly was like separated Lottie out, right? And put them at shitty tables. And you saw the alliance between Lottie and
Rosemary.
But I wanted to be at the same table as Senator Helms so he could sign my book. He wrote the foreword.
One of his aides wrote that.
Well, then we better make sure to introduce you to him at the gala.
Back to your point, Moji, watching the evolution of Alice, and in her evolution, at least, of seeing that Phyllis was not out for women, seeing that Phyllis was out for herself. And I think that exhale of her being hammered at the party and just coming at Phyllis.
There's our Jonava.
Oh,
Doesn't she work miracles?
now this is my dear friend Alice.
Unless
who
your
first
husband's
told
a
me-
jerk, and then you're on your own.
Every viewer wanted to see one of those Phyllis droids come at her at some point. And I think that this last episode was a really good place for her to be like, you're horrible. And it was like, whoa, this is awesome.
Yeah, Alice is always been the drunk conscience of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She has been.
Courage.
And also for people my age, like this is something I was thinking about, like a very thing that happened all the time in the 70s were these bomb threats.
Did they find a bomb? Oh, it's probably just a bunch of slobs and poor lib losers trying to ruin our fun.
I forgot about how often we had to leave buildings or baseball games or concerts because there was a bomb threat. Somebody would call in and things would disperse. And so I'm wondering if it was the feminists being like, I'm going to break up your fucking gala with a bomb.
Maybe there was a bomb threat that was real, but like,
yep. So Molly, what was your favorite episode? We're getting to you, but I wanted to. What was your favorite moment in this episode?
You know what? I really liked how they sort of okay, so I've been saying forever that this is, the feminists are they're the Titanic on the way to hit the iceberg. And this is the last episode, so we're here. And that iceberg is Reagan. And we're seeing that finally. So I mean, the like frenzied montage that they get us into here to hit the Reagan era, I think really hit home what's about to happen.
It is, in truth, a Reagan Republican landslide sweeping across this nation tonight.
A Reagan landslide, ladies and gentlemen.
I really appreciate how the show didn't hammer too hard the parallels between the 2016 election and the 1980 election, but they're there and they're clear. The "Let's Make America Great Again" buttons.
I didn't realize until this show that Reagan's slogan had been "Let's Make America Great Again." Like, wow, our current president is really not original.
In any level, but it was also, it's gave those of you who are young an indication to what our fucking pool was, and these were offered to us as people we had to have sex with.
I am sorry.
That Steve Bannon look was real back then, with the shirt under the shirt.
With the shirt under the shirt.
Oh my God, the double polo. Yeah, that was real. Also, sex was fatal. It was a great decade.
Yeah, that's true. Sex became fatal then. So for me, like I echo Joe in the point that you made, Joe, about your favorite moment when they were all throwing down their resignations to Ham Jordan. And I felt like what was so powerful for me about that was, it was so, when you made a decision as a woman to speak out against somebody that powerful, you were blackballed. You were not getting another job. So you assessed the situation and thought that you needed to further something for other people and for Bella, and to see people make that decision, women back in that time, to say, I'm going to quit my job, and I'm not only just going to quit my job, I'm siding with the uppity, loud New York Jewish troublemaker. It was really impressive and powerful. It just doesn't happen that often, and I'm with you. That was my favorite part too. So, having said that, you've met all the players. You must now meet the cocktail, because tonight's cocktail is the very, 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 very old-fashioned. Here it is. Go for it. Bring it up. Do it. Moji's drinking something not recognizable as an at all.
You know, maybe I put a little too much maraschino cherry juice in mine.
So if you're drinking at home, the very, very, very old-fashioned is a drink in a glass of your choice that we've called that. So actually, we really just like to say funny names for cocktails that tie in with the episode. Final episodes are hard, right? There's just like that wave of disappointment that you're hoping for, and we all had it. And so, Joe, what was your like, oh, why didn't you?
Well, what I wish had happened was, I wish that her housekeeper, Willie Reed, had written that cookbook that her friend told her she should write.
Not. You should publish all your recipes.
Where?
In a cookbook.
Well, I could do a whole chapter on ERA breads and pies.
Right? Because she could have spilled so much tea and just written a tell-all cookbook.
Yes.
Because
well, she probably wrote Phyllis's cookbook.
Yeah.
But it was not there it is, that Joe had.
Show it.
There it is. They sell this. The Eagle Forum sells this if you want to be on their mailing list forever. And her in her kitchen, the kitchen in the show is absolutely modeled on her real one, except that Phyllis is in it sometimes, which is.
I feel like the kitchen in your life might also be modeled on it. As we're looking at your kitchen, you are nailing it.
Oh, yeah. Are you actually a big Schlafly fan? Design?
I try to model my life on her, and by life I mean kitchen, because that's where I belong.
I learned the lessons.
I have fruit peel.
That's so incredible. And also, you gave us a taste of your crawl space, where you put your canning. That was also very, very similar to Phyllis's crazy bomb shelter.
Well, I don't have powdered skim milk because yuck. I do have but if you're not ready for a Soviet first strike, I don't know what you're doing with your life.
I feel like the Soviet first strike came in the form of giving us Donald Trump as our president.
That's the first strike.
I'm just saying. Molly, let's go to you. What was your disappointment, hon?
So, speaking of the peaches, I want to talk about that last scene where Phyllis gets the call from Reagan that she's not going to be a part of his cabinet. And I take issue with that last scene a little bit. She sheds a single tear, turns away from Fred, gathers herself, and then goes into the kitchen to sit down and peel a bunch of apples. And so that last scene is based off of a famous French film that I did not know about until this, where it's a 3-hour film of a woman sort of just performing these menial tasks. And so great, art is great. However, I do want to harken back to a scene where she was upset before, and her reaction was to slap herself. So I was hoping that we would see one more self-slap at the end, but it didn't happen. Instead, they went for the artistry and Phyllis back in the domestic sphere, which we're not even sure she was ever solidly in.
You know what I kind of like about the metaphor is that Phyllis didn't get in the cabinet and wound up in the junk drawer. She might be the only thing in the junk drawer. I mean, let's be honest. It's Phil.
Yeah.
Moji, what disappointed you? What made you sigh?
So, final episodes are final episodes. I feel like this one, when we get through it and it's fine. And then we get to the title card and it basically is like, and feminists disappeared. Like, it really was like, they never had political clout again. And then we jump to 3 years to I guess 2018, right? But it's between 1979 and 2018, feminism went to sleep.
In 1979, which is when the show ends, I was 18. And so I was also a person, along with many, many women I know, who discovered punk rock music. And that revolution was also this unbridled rage on a larger scale. And feminism had terrible music. I am not going to lie. Chris Williamson and Women with a Y and those kind of singing about it was not great. If you wanted to get rid of your rage, Judy Collins isn't doing it for you, right? And so I think that this outward rage thing for a lot of people in the early 80s went towards AIDS, right? Went towards AIDS activism and went towards just the totality of Reagan as a whole. And I think people were just backlashing around a lot of stuff. And we all know that when we do that, women are backburnered anyway. So I think that with everybody being mad in a larger scale, that I think a lot of pushing forward of feminism in the early 80s and throughout to the mid 80s was kind of gone. And so it's I think that we should finish off this episode giving folks some knowledge about what happened with the ERA after that and where it's at now and what it means for our emancipation.
Well, the ERA didn't even start in the 70s. The ERA was first proposed by a Quaker suffragist in 1923.
Those Quakers, they get it right.
Yeah.
Well,
they didn't like this.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
yeah, they got it. They got an amendment passed, and it was the wrong one. So, suffragists, get your priorities straight. So it was brought up for a vote in Congress every session for decades, and not until 1972 was it passed. And it was oh shit, we got it. Let's take it to the states. And it seemed like its moment had come. And so, it had come up in 1923 on a surge of suffragist feminist activism, and then went quiet for 50 years, kind of. And then it came back in 72 and lost, and then it went quiet for 40 years. And now here we are. And as the show said, in 2017, Nevada ratified it. In 2018, Illinois ratified it. In 2020, Virginia became the 38th state, which means you have enough states. Or does it? Because 5 states in the 70s had unratified thanks to Phyllis and her gang, and said, no, take backs. Now, is that legal? Can they? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So where we are now is, okay, who in their right mind would be against equal rights for women? Most of the things that they were scaremongering about have already happened, like co-ed bathrooms and women in the military. But the right made it about abortion. And their big, scary boogie bear is, if you get the ERA, then Medicaid will pay for medically necessary abortions. So if you have an unviable pregnancy and it costs $10,000s of dollars to save your life, and the government might chip in for that. Now, who wants to live in that country? Half the country doesn't.
Not me.
I'm like, meanwhile, doesn't that happen in a bunch of states? Not all of them, but it happens in some states.
Happens in New Mexico. And that's their like scary thing, because the anti-abortionists kind of fucked up, because they said, look, if we get ERA, then the women will have to have the right to Medicaid abortions. Like, oh, okay, you just proposed the legal reasoning for an alternative to Roe. Thank you.
Thank you. We're writing that down.
Yeah, let me take a note on that. I know, and it feels like it's so interesting too when you watch the trajectory from when the suffragists proposed, men wouldn't assume and that we would have any ambition of ourselves whatsoever. So of course you want as many women as possible to have the rights to vote, because then you'll just manipulate them, and the husband, you want to convince their husbands to have a second. It was basically giving men a second vote, because you would just ask the man in your life who you should vote for, so that candidate would get 2 votes. That's literally how they looked at women getting the vote. And then when women were like, well, maybe I have some ideas about some things, it was like, oh, shut this shit down. This one has an idea. Like, which?
Press the panic button on the women's thoughts.
Yeah, and it's just so depressing. And I think now it's going to be interesting to see how this gets prioritized. In the next election, we'll see what happens, and we'll see if some pro-ERA people in Congress want to further this. But seeing how white men who have been asked to share power react, I wonder if it's just going to be such an inevitable backlash when we can push it forward. And how do you, in this day and age, what is your framing to make it sound like, to be against the ERA and make it sound like you're not a fucking monster?
I know you aren't asking me the question, but I feel like
all of you
who are against the ERA don't mind looking like a fucking monster. And listening to the timeline as Joe was laying it out, I was like, okay, 50 years, 40 years, we got to wait 30 more years? Like, what the hell? When I was doing some of the research about the state of the ERA, because I was like, well, what would this really change? And I think one of the fun things and really interesting things about making an amendment change is that even if things go to the Supreme Court, they'll have to take equality into what they think about when they measure whether a bill or some sort of legislature works. Like, is it equal? And I feel like that change alone, because a lot of times it's just like, have we done this before? Okay.
I think so. I mean, it's like when you read about how Roe was argued, it was argued on privacy. It was actually argued on the doctor's privacy, right? Inability to perform. And instead of being argued on, like you said, Moji, the equal rights, like what does it mean and how does full equality work? And I'm pretty sure full equality works that the government can't intervene in bodily autonomy. And I think that is going to be the greatest workaround for us, so that if they try to roll back Roe, they can't, because we have an amendment in our Constitution that says we have full equality and no law can be made that would strip away any part of the equality that would lead to our self-determination. So that's why I think it's really important that we all seize the moment when it happens and go for it.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting, hopefully, once the ERA is pushed more, to see the parallels of the Phyllis Schlafly arguments and lies, just like resurface probably almost verbatim. I think the Born Alive Survivors Act is going to be a huge way to like spark fear and say we can't.
You know, I was born alive and I would like to survive.
And I'm terrified.
Right?
And it didn't work out for them that you were born, okay?
No, they're not happy.
So I'm not excited to see these tactics, but I hope people who came with us along on this journey will now pay attention and pick up on these blatant lies and scare tactics that are just reused. It's probably a literal playbook by this point that they're using. So
yeah.
So final thoughts. Let's just go for like some final thought overviews on what we thought of the series as a whole. Let's start with you, Joe. Overview of the series. Like what would you tell people?
I love this series. I really loved it. And since we have watched each episode several times in prepping for the show, I really respect it as a show that bears repeated viewing. You do find new things. And as a historian, I love that they stuck so closely to the source material. A lot of the lines are things that people really said. And I think it's just a great tactic for illuminating an issue, to take a figure that a lot of people, young people, don't know, because really she became just like a CPAC regular in that world after 1980, and tell the story through that personality. I want to see more history TV.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Molly.
I love how they really, as an epic story, the lesson learned was that sisterhood wins, and throwing people under the bus and trusting fake male allies just isolates you. Like, we didn't pass the ERA. Okay, so we lost that battle. But just the theme of the show is that we win. We do win in the end, and our battle is going to be harder. We're going to lose a lot more, but morally we have the high ground, even though they claim it. And I just love that theme was so beautifully tied up in the end, with Phyllis alone peeling apples, no friends, you know. Well, we'll always have fun because we know the value of intersectionality and bringing people up. Now we saw them struggle through it, but I love that lesson.
Moj?
So I loved it. I love this whole journey. I love this show. I agree with Joe. It really stands up to repeated viewing. There's enough like fun little nuggets in there that you can always tease something else out. Beautifully acted, beautiful costumes, just like beautifully shot. And also to piggyback on, or just to add to what Molly said, it was interesting at the end, we had Phyllis sort of alone in the kitchen. And what I saw in my last viewing was the Gloria Steinem is giving this speech about equality and like working together. And then they have the same shot of the lights behind her. And then there's just a huge faceless crowd of the masses. And I was like, oh, right. Phyllis is like show ponying to like her friends, and like the feminists are reaching out to all the people. It was really like a beautiful ending to me. And it was something I caught at my very last viewing of the last episode. I just really have enjoyed this. It's been a fun ride.
I agree. I think it was really fun. And for me, there was a couple things. And one is that I love that it didn't just like make mention of the problematic nature of fighting for equality and, you know, the racial tensions. It was a theme throughout, right? And so you could watch it, you watched it develop. It wasn't just like a one-off they threw in an episode because it was a situation that happened. I think they tried to address the systemic nature of a lot of bad shit. And I do like the fact that, like, I feel like there was a moral, and that moral is if you are in movement building to promote yourself, you will be alone, and does not work. And I really thought that it sort of encapsulates what all of you had said about it, because I don't know. It made me feel like you said, Molly, you know, they can claim whatever they want to claim. Mm-hmm. I just don't believe they would show up in any way, shape, or form when things were hard for any of them.
Especially Pamela.
Yeah, exactly. You watch what happened with Pamela. That was really throughout the show, right? So I just thought it was I love what all of you had to say, and I just echo all of it. So that's what I'm saying. Like, echoing all of it.
Sent her gay son to a farm upstate because he was politically inconvenient.
Yeah, like a dog with parvo. Like, what are you doing? We sent him to the farm. It's like, oh my God.
That's family
garbage.
values.
So the good news is feminism is alive and well. You can go to Abortion Access Front. It is aafront.org and find out all about it. Join us in our fight because we are together and fighting it. And I think it would be a good thing to go out with watching what modern feminism looks like and watching Carol Foy on the floor of the Virginia State House telling you why the ERA matters. So, Joe Miller, thank you for being our guest and being amazing.
Thank you.
Moji, Molly, let's figure out a new show we can watch and have some kind of recap. I love it. So let's take Carol Foy take us out. Bye, everybody. Oh, Joe's too.
Loser. So I'm in the salon.
Because losers belong in the salon, Joe.
Bye.
Abortion Access Front, fueled by cheap wine and the stench of patriarchy.
Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. These 24 words will be the 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution. So our rights can't be abrogated, our freedom cannot be stripped away, or our fate will not be dependent upon an election. This year celebrates the 100th year anniversary of women's right to vote. And I implore all of you today, right now, vote for women's constitutional equality. ERA now and equal rights for women forever. Thank you. I move for the vote of this resolution.
Shall the resolution be agreed to? The clerk shall close the roll.
Ayes 58, nays 40, abstentions 0.
Ayes 58, nays 40, abstention 0. The resolution passes.